Sri Sachidananda Sadguru Sainath Maharaj ki Jai, The Supreme Master by Ekiral Varadwaj Garu. Chapter 6 His Word is Law. It is wrong to imagine that all or even most of the visitors to Akkalkot were all spiritual stalwarts like those mentioned in the previous chapter. Many came to the Swami with worldly desires and ambitions. Not only did the Swami fulfill their wishes and alleviate their sufferings with his spiritual power, but also kindled the urge for spiritual perfection in their hearts. Then there was those that came to test him and scoff at him. The instance of a celebrated courtesan by name Radha is enough to illustrate how the Swami dealt with such cases and what the outcome of such a contact was. One day, great disciples like Vaman Bhuva and many other devotees and visitors were seated in the august presence of the Swami. A famous courtesan of that part of the province by name Radha came and took Swami's darshan and sat at his feet. Such a visitor looked odd and out of the place in such a gathering, and naturally everyone was wondering what her motive or attitude to the Swami was. They were all anxiously observing what Swami's reaction would be. Some of them were sure that she was sent by some scoffers to test the Swami's moral strength. On seeing the glorious form of the Swami, the first thought or question that arose in Radha's mind was whether his body ever knew the touch of a woman. At once, the Swami turned to her and said, "What is the difference between a man and a woman? What is there in a woman which is not there in a man?" The lady was startled to note that the Swami noticed her every thought. After a little pause, she said nonchalantly, "Why not? For instance, women have beautiful breasts which man does not have." The Swami smiled and said, "Do you have them or does your body have them? If you were to have them, you must be able to transfer them to someone else." She could not answer, and there was a silence for a little while. When she was staring winkless at him, the Swami said mockingly, "Why do you stare at me like that?" She hung her head in bashfulness, bowed to him, and left the place. Within a few days, her beautiful bust became flat like that of a man, and there was a corresponding moral transformation in her heart. She came to feel a deep aversion for her low profession. She gave up her immoral life, went to the holy city of Varanasi, and spent the rest of her life there in prayer and worship. Thus, as one biographer of the Swami has remarked, learning, kingly power, and the power of beauty have all tried to capture the heart of the Swami, but all of them failed miserably. The first came in the form of Vishnubuva, the second in the form of Raja Maloji, and the third in the form of Radha. A barber used to shave and cut nails of Swami periodically. He was also shrewd enough to keep the saints' hair and nails with him and sell them as talismans to those who were suffering. As they were very effective, the talismans were in great demand. Though he first started the practice of using them as a talisman out of faith in the Swami, soon the motive of profit took possession of his heart, and at once the talismans started losing their efficacy. So he had to give up that business. In the year 1857, Saka 1779, the Kodak Photography Company photographed the Swami for the first time. In the presence of a big halo around the Swami's picture in the photograph surprised all the people. Photography was being introduced in India just then, and it was so costly that only great Rajas could afford it. The company was just then established in Bombay, and in order to publicize it, they wanted to produce certain pictures, but they could not decide what their proper theme should be. The British governor and some other distinguished men happened to read about the fame and greatness of the Swami in the local papers and were attracted to him to take his darshan. But they felt it below their dignity to go for his darshan, and it was equally impossible to summon him to them. So they sent an expert photographer to get his pictures. The photographer tried to secure the Swami's permission to take his pictures, but the Swami never heeded the recommendation of his devotees. The photographer at last decided to take the pictures without his consent, and keeping everything ready, he waited for the proper pose. But when he got it, before he could click the camera, the Swami would turn away or move. This frustrating experience repeated itself 10 to 20 times before he could somehow take one picture. He was immensely pleased that he could successfully deceive the Swami. He immediately placed the photo print in front of the Swami, mockingly saying, "What do you say now for this?" The Swami pushed the picture towards one of his devotees and as indifferently and said, "Tell me what you see there." The devotee eagerly looked at it and said, "This is a picture of Sri Rama, how beautiful." Then the Swami pushed it to another devotee and repeated the same question. The man said, "It is the picture of Supreme Goddess." It was passed on to the many others, and one of them found it to be Lord Shankara in meditation. Another saw Lord Vishnu, a fifth saw Vitthal of Pandharpur, the sixth saw Kandoba. Many more saw their chosen deities in the same picture. The photographer lost his temper and wondered whether they were all mad, for could they not recognize the Swami's picture. So he said to Swami, "You see it for yourself and tell me." The Swami looked at it with feigned attention and seriousness, then burst into laughter and said, "Oh, do I look like this?" and returned the picture to the photographer. He was struck dumb with wonder to find in it the picture of a monkey. He at once realized that Swami performed this miracle to stamp out of his ego and pride and sought his pardon. He once again requested the Swami to permit him to take another picture, saying, "Your picture is sacred and is worthy of being kept in everyone's house. Please permit us to serve the people in this and thereby profit ourselves." Then the Swami consented and the picture came off nicely this time. Even on subsequent occasions, it was found that the photographs taken without Swami's consent never came off. A photographer named Fatke took an appointment with the Swami to take his picture at 5 p.m. on a certain date. He turned up punctually with all his equipment, but the Swami detained him up to 7 p.m. by asking him to hold the pipe of his hookah as he smoked it. When the Fadke lost all the hope of taking the picture on that day, and when there was no light, the Swami asked him to take the picture. Fadke submitted that he did not get the flash gun with him. The Swami laughed loudly, holding his belly, and asked Fadke to take the film plate in his hand and process it as it was. To the wonder of all, the print showed the picture of Swami puffing at the hookah. Copies of this photograph can be seen imprinted in some of the books on Swami's life. Govinda Shastri, a poor Brahmin, could not endure his poverty any longer. He went to see the Swami for the last time before committing suicide. The Swami looked at him and said, "Go and dig under the creeper in your backyard. Live by what you find there and spend your time in the service of God." The poor Brahmin returned to his house, dug up the earth beneath the creeper, and found a treasure there. He spent his life happily as directed by the Swami. We find that a similar miracle was performed by Sri Narasimha Saraswati of Gangapur, with whom Sri Swami Samarth often identified himself, and it can be considered as a sort of corroboration of this identity. This miracle is recounted in detail in Sri Guru Charitra. Jai Sai Master.